fellow citizens for exercising their rights to peacefully protest. And peacefully protest. And peacefully protest. And peacefully protest.
Welcome to the Bill Mason Show. It's Thursday, September the 10th, 2020? What is it? What year is this, Bill?
Oh, believe me, it's 2020. I don't think many people will forget.
I want to go back.
2020. Yeah, I would love to. I mean, honestly, we are here in the moment where people are declaring peaceful protest while things are literally on fire behind them, while there's broken glass on the ground. I've actually watched reporters reporting on a site where you can hear them stepping on broken glass, claiming that the peaceful protesters were here and such. And it drives people like me crazy. And I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's, they're saying peaceful protest, but then again, there's fire in the background. It's not good. It's only a few more days until the election. Let's take a look. 53 days, 11 hours, and 32 minutes, 46 seconds till election.
That's right. And that's why it's super important for all of our viewers out there to get registered if you're not already. I've talked to a couple of people that are, never voted before, and I couldn't believe that they thought it was really important to get involved in this election, and they are Trumpers. So I'm on board with that. So everybody find your local registration office and get out there and register to vote, because you don't want any issues when you go.
That is correct. Make sure you vote, and make sure you vote Trump. That's
Absolutely.
The key.
I mean, it's life and death. This is a life and death vote. I mean, the people, like I said, that I talked to that have never voted before and they're in their late 40s are like, I can't let this guy get in office. I cannot let Biden hold the keys to this country. And I'm like,
the whole
right
country
on, brother.
Burn. The whole country would burn if he gets in.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. Before we go off on the other thing, is that when you watch Biden try to spin the fact that they supported the protesting, they supported the fires, the burning, the looting, and all the things, and then all of a sudden the polls come back that most of those people that were involved in those burnings and those small businesses, not all of them were Republicans. They lost some serious Democrat votes by supporting the destruction of those lifestyles, those livelihoods, and those businesses. So that's their fault, nobody else's.
Yeah, there were Democrat buildings that were burnt to the ground, so it's not just Republicans. I would say a lot of those buildings were Democrat buildings.
Yep, and you're going to lose the vote because of that. They should have came out and said, hey, Democrat or Republican, you need law and order. Let's not even make that an issue. But they chose to go down the road of defund the police and all the other crap load that BLM piled on, and now they're eating crow because the American people are saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's true. Now, the big story now is the Woodward tapes.
Yeah, this guy. He
now,
wrote a book. Are you surprised?
Right, but it looks like, who got these tapes before? Was it CNN that got these tapes before anybody else?
I think, Woodward and Bernstein, if anybody doesn't know who these guys really are, this goes back to the Nixon impeachment. And Woodward and Bernstein, when they were young journalists, were the guys who found the guy who they referred to as Deep Throat, who, if you Google all this information, you could find it. I'm not going to go hugely into it, but they were the two journalists that broke the story of the Richard Nixon tapes, okay, where he was recording people. And the funniest thing about it is what I notice about liberals and the left is that right before something comes to light that would maybe make them look guilty, like, for example, Obama is looking very guilty as far as the spying on the Trump campaign. It's almost undeniable. There's really no backpedaling. It's a solid fact. That's why stuff like this comes out, where they're going to accuse Trump of something, and they're going to use a guy who's claiming that this is bigger than Watergate. okay, that this is the new Watergate, or this surpasses Watergate, which is such BS. This guy's trying to peddle books. And I mean, we could talk about the book industry and how they use it to pay these politicians, because these clearinghouses, okay, they buy hundreds of thousands of books in one click to pay these guys. And it looks like just regular book sales. Hey, we're a clearinghouse where we warehouse the books and then we sell them. But honestly, it's like an instant paycheck for these clowns. They paid Bernie that way. They paid a bunch. They paid, what's his name? Cuomo, they paid him that way, right, for his stupid book right before the pandemic. So, I mean, this is like the secret clandestine way to give these guys some money for doing their dirty work. Write a book, get paid.
Everybody gets a book in the Democratic Party.
Yep.
So let's take a look at the tapes. Before we go there, though, I mean, as far as your take on it, I mean, do you think it was wise that Trump did these tapes with Woodward?
When I looked into it, I actually heard that Jared Kushner thought it was a good idea because he thought Woodward was going to be totally truthful and brutally honest, because that's what supposedly his career is like, built on. But like Trump is a brutally honest guy. If like, I know we've seen the tapes already, some people may have not. He is shooting from the hip, from a leader's perspective. Like if it was a business and he was running a business and there was a huge fire in the South warehouse and he was trying to get the people not to panic in the whole company and ruin the business that was going to take place after. That's how he's thinking. It's not about a virus, because the thing is the virus is there whether he does nothing, like the Obama administration did with H1N1. They did nothing. They lost thousands of lives, but the infections were just as high as COVID. But the recovery rate for H1N1 was doable. So they did nothing. The panic of COVID, it almost was like a forced panic button for the presidency, which Trump didn't do. I think he played all the right cards at the right time. And he was called a racist for stopping the travel. He was called, xenophobic and anti-China and all these things. And then the Democrats, they ran out and said, come to Chinatown. It's a great place. Like,
we did a show on
fine.
that. Yeah, the Democrats in Chinatown in February telling the people to go eat in Chinatown.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I want to say about, they're talking about February when this went down. Don't forget that Trump was coming off an impeachment, a BS impeachment process that literally took up probably 99% of his time. Yet he still found time to forward into this pandemic thing, when the information from even the CDC, Fauci, and others was like, hey, it's not here yet. Let's wait and see. So that puts perspective on Trump's stance too. That makes me think that he was waiting for the rock solid information to make the big decisions. And Woodward, who apparently had this information back in February, chose to release it now. Why didn't he run out on February 10th and release it and say, oh my God, there's a pandemic?
If he wasn't so concerned, why didn't he go ahead and do it then? Exactly.
Yeah, if he was this giant voice of the people, why did he wait till his book was coming out to let this out? This is ridiculous.
All right, let's take a look, see what he said.
And so what was President Xi saying yesterday?
Well, we were talking mostly about the virus, and I think he's going to have it in good shape, but it's a very tricky situation.
Indeed,
it goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. The touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. People don't realize we lose 25,000, 30,000 people a year here. Who would ever think that, right?
I know. It's
pretty amazing. And then I say, well, is that the same thing? This is more deadly. This is 5 per. This is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%. So this is deadly stuff. Now it's turning out it's not just old people, Bob. Just today and yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just older
Yeah,
young
exactly.
people, to plenty of young people.
So
But look at what's going on in
give
Japan.
me a moment of talking to somebody, going through this with Fauci or somebody who kind of it caused a pivot in your mind, because it's clear just from what's on the public record that you went through a pivot on this to, oh my God, the gravity is almost inexplicable and unexplainable.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
Sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down
Yes,
because I don't want to create a panic.
There he is. So of course he doesn't want to cause a panic. There was already a rush on toilet paper. You couldn't find toilet paper for weeks on
We
end.
did a show on that too.
So what do you think?
I mean, to say this is the Democrat thing from what I can, digest, is that they talk out of both sides of their mouth. So while they were also poo-pooing the pandemic back in February and even into March, where, Cuomo and all of his Department of Health people were saying, no, we're still going to have parades, ride the subways, ride the buses. They poo-pooed the pandemic just as much as anybody in the administration, because they were really hoping that it was going to be, concentrated in China and have low levels everywhere. What they didn't realize is that China actually encouraged travel to Europe, and if they could get there through other means, they encouraged it. So that's another thing that, people don't talk about, that China, when they had the chance to not only, limit the spread, they did not. And then
Well, not only that, they fibbed the numbers. So we were reporting back in January that over 400,000 people are dead in China, and they didn't tell the world anything.
Absolutely. And still, what was their end number? 5,000, I think, at
No,
tops.
it's still under 5,000. It's 4,000 something.
It's BS.
Right.
It's total BS.
So I mean, they fibbed the numbers. They thought it was no big deal.
Right.
We saw people dead in the street. So
Sure.
and the numbers were 400,000. Just on our intelligence, you think of what they have. I mean,
And-
they can have better intelligence than us, can they?
Exactly. And the worst part was, when we were ringing the alarm back in late January, we were actually getting throttled and censored. So It was, if you're not an official doctor, you can't talk about COVID. I remember getting videos shut down and stuff like that, because they were literally trying to not panic people. So it wasn't just Trump, it was the news networks, it was YouTube and Facebook and everybody. They were like, shh, it's not a big deal. Everybody go back to work.
And it wasn't even called COVID back then. It was called something
Exactly.
else. So,
Exactly.
anyway.
So the thing about Woodward, though, before we move on, Woodward is definitely an opportunist. His partner in crime, Bernstein, he locked up a CNN job. I don't know if anybody really pays attention to some of the stupid CNN shows, but he's a commentator on a CNN show, and he is just a dyed-in-the-wool leftist, and he has been anti-Trump from almost day one. And I can only imagine that these guys, who have built a career together are still talking. But I can guarantee you that Woodward and Bernstein are two guys that literally are cashing in on the storyline. And that's what they do. If it's not there, you can make a storyline and create it. Look at all these books that have been written by everybody, even the guys that don't cut it in the Trump administration. What do they do when they leave or get fired? Write a book. Honestly, because this is the thing. It's the Trump wave. Like, if you were involved with Trump, you could make money off the fact that you shook his hand on a golf course. I mean, this is the world we live in. And these people, even though they have nothing but bad stuff to say, they realize that there's a market for bad Trump press. And that's what they cash in on. And there are people out there that chomp at the bit, like baby birds. They're like, feed me. And they can't wait for the next new conspiracy. And like I said in the beginning, if Woodward was really concerned with the level that Trump was handling this, he could have released that stuff second week of February, and it would have been like, he would have been like the voice of, hey, everybody, let's get worried. But he wasn't. He waited like everyone else.
He wanted to wait till the book came out.
Exactly. It's so transparent. To me, it's so transparent. Just like the Atlantic article, the BS about, Trump and the troops. Okay. If you watch how that thing was constructed, right? Normally an article hits the media, people start to talk about it, on a lower level. And then all of a sudden, maybe a news pundit will go out there and they'll report on it. And then other people will start to talk about it. The day the Atlantic article hit, they interviewed Joe Biden about it. They interviewed all these people about it. It was like a 3, 2, 1, go situation. It was collusion between the media, the Atlantic, and it was softball questions to Biden because Biden has nothing to go on but Trump.
We have that, and we have Nancy Pelosi talking about the wrap-up smear. So we're going to play that in a little bit. So that's exactly what that is. It's called a wrap-up smear, and that's what they just did to Trump, and they do that over and over again. But let's take a look at what Trump said today about the tapes. Take a look.
Why did you lie to the American people, and why should we trust what you have to say now?
Such a terrible question, and the phraseology. I didn't lie. What I said is we have to be calm. We can't be panicked. I knew that the tapes these were a series of phone calls that we had, mostly phone calls. And Bob Woodward is somebody that I respect just from hearing the name for many, many years, not knowing too much about his work, not caring about his work. But I thought it would be interesting to talk to him for a period of, calls. So we did that. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't even know if the book is good or bad. But certainly if he thought that was a bad statement, he would have reported it because he thinks that, you don't want to have anybody that is going to suffer medically because of some fact. And he didn't report it because he didn't think it was bad. Nobody thought it was bad. Wait a minute. And your question, the way you phrase that is such a disgrace. It's a disgrace to ABC television network. It's a disgrace to your employer. And that's the answer. You ready? Because I love.
Of
course I didn't. Of course I didn't.
It was deadlier than the flu, and then you went out and told the American public that this was just like the flu.
Let me tell you something. We've had flu years.
You told everybody else something else.
No, and 5 times, right? 5 times. You ever hear the expression 5 times? We've had flu years where we lost 100,000 people. The flu is a very serious problem for this country also, and we've been losing them. Scott, what kind of a number have we lost over the years with flus? Into the hundreds of thousands.
Well, I mean, the last 5 years have been something like 35 to 80,000 per year, every year, even with antiviral drugs and even with
flu is a very serious problem also. But just so you know,
this is worse than the most deadlier than the most strenuous flu.
Okay.
And then you went out and said it's just like the flu.
What I went out and said is very simple. Listen, what I went out and said is very simple. I want to show a level of confidence, and I want to show strength as a leader, and I want to show that our country is going to be fine one way or the other. Whether we lose one person, we shouldn't lose any because this shouldn't have happened. This is China's fault. This is nobody's fault but China. China should not have allowed it to happen. Whether you have one person, 180,000 people, or 2.5 or 3 million people, which it could have been very seriously if we didn't make the moves. And when you look at the opposition where they said, oh, why did he put the ban on? Dr. Fauci said we saved hundreds of thousands of lives by putting the ban on China and then ultimately putting the ban on Europe. There was no lie here. What we're doing is we're leading, and we're leading in a proper way. And if, frankly, somebody else was leading it, they wouldn't have closed it.
There we go. So that was his response.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just trying to calm the people, make sure they don't panic. And then if he didn't close China, look what would have happened. It would have been a lot worse.
Disastrous. Honestly, if he didn't do what he did when he did it, it would have been disastrous. And it's almost like, I hate to say it, but you're watching other people get hurt and then you're like, I'm not going to act till it's my family. And then when it's your family, you're like, okay, now I have to get involved. And that's kind of like how I viewed it as a world event, that Trump views America, like his family. And it sucks to say, but when it was affecting other countries, he was like, man, that sucks for them, because that's Trump's nature. Like, hey, you got to figure that out. I'm going to figure it out here. Now, when he took action, like we said before, he was just fresh coming off of an impeachment, fresh coming off of a media onslaught for 16 months of total BS of everything he's ever done. And he still managed to make a primetime decision at the time when I think it was necessary. Now, watching the media spin it backwards and try to make it as if his actions weren't, on time, or he was lacking or slow or anything. It's Monday morning quarterbacking, because we were already in a situation with China where we were behind the 8 ball on how many masks we had, how many gloves we had, all the PPE, because of the Obama administration and the free trade agreements that they signed. Right. We literally gave them the keys to the production of all that low level stuff. So you can't fix that with the snap of a finger.
Joe Biden was in office for 44 years. I mean, exactly. He shipped all that stuff overseas into China, India, you name it.
Exactly. So under those Democrats, like I heard a couple of people talking, recently, and they're being honest with themselves now that they did have 8 years of Obama, and they really didn't see any change. And they're being honest with me and saying, I have more in my bank account. I'm not going to lie. Like, there's more money there. I'm making things better for myself. So, I mean, I said, well, there you go. And there's a lot of people that talk about, oh, that's Barack Obama's economy. But Barack Obama was the one who just kept talking about, you can't bring those jobs back. What do you have, a magic wand? Like, he was the guy who was saying no one could do it. And Trump apparently found it. And he was like, expecto patronus. And then we had jobs, it's crazy. So here's the world that we live in, this constant spin. And I'm starting to see the pattern. The pattern is when the Democrats are about to get pinned to the wall. Like, I honestly see this book deal with Woodward. He's trying to compare Trump to Watergate and Nixon, because people are going to draw the conclusion that Obama was a worse Watergate. The spying, the level of corruption that he was under is worse than Watergate. So let's beat them to the punch before the Durham report comes out and release this stupid book that some guy is going to get paid for by a clearinghouse, and it's going to accuse Trump of being, Watergate level, incompetence, we'll call it. But that is their move as Democrats. Before they get accused and get convicted, they accuse someone else of the same thing.
It's called a wrap-up smear. Let's take a look and see what Nancy Pelosi said about a wrap-up smear.
Exactly.
Demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
Look, she's happy about that.
She knows it's commonplace. Honestly, I can look at her and see the entrenched Democrat leftist dishonesty that she's okay operating under. She understands that that's part of the business. I mean, honestly, she's revealing the trick. It's like David Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear and going, yeah, you know how I did that? Mirrors.
Exactly. This is how you do it, but exactly. After the fact.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So we have more tapes here. We have Trump talking about racism. Let's take a look at that.
Do you think there is systematic or institutional racism in this country?
Well, I think there is everywhere. I think probably less here than most places, or less here than many places.
Okay, but is it here? in a way that it has an impact on people's lives.
I think it is, and it's unfortunate, but I think it is.
All right, so there you go. So what is that? What is it called? So tell me the definition of
Ah,
systemic racism.
yeah, the Webster's Dictionary, according to them, systemic racism is a belief that a race is a fundamental determinant in the outcome of a particular ethnicity's success, detriment, or treatment. So that being said, systemic racism, it's almost like they're attaching it to just human beings in general. And I know a lot of people that have prejudice towards certain things, not even people, like their prejudice of the government, for let's use that an example. No matter what the government does, they're always going to say that, oh, the government's out to get me, and like these things are coming at me. So that's a form of prejudice. So pointing it on the police, like the systemic racism like you see happening now, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so when you can say that systemic racism is in everything, like a pyramid, like all the way down, now you justify your dismantling of it all. Like it's the smear. Honestly, you have to demonize something, someone, or everyone, and then you have carte blanche to do whatever you want to them. Like, Hitler would go out and tell, people that the Jews were evil. That's why killing them is not a big deal. And once people started to accept that, they started to say, yeah, I guess they had to die. If you start by demonizing a certain thing, whether it's a person, an entity, an organization, and once they're demonized, once they become systemically racist, quote unquote, now it gives Black Lives Matter and all these other people reason to assault people, reason to defund them.
Yeah, doesn't it mean that you don't know your racism, but you are?
Well, yeah, they say that too. They say like systemic racism is so built in that you don't even realize how racist you are.
So I'm racist, you're racist,
right?
But we don't know it. Does that mean that other minorities can be racist, or is this white people can be racist?
I think you're kind of bulletproof. Like, people of color have found this safety in the racism thing because of the 1619 Project, and when you can focus on slavery in America as if it only occurred in America, and it makes all of us guilty, when in essence people who do history and really dig deep know that slavery was global. Slavery was global for a really, really long time, thousands of years. And everyone participated in it.
There is slavery. There's slavery in Libya. They're selling people now in Libya.
Exactly.
Black people are selling black people in Libya.
Yes. So to say that everything goes back to the founding of this country, and this is the Black Lives Matter movement as well, this is why you can't let anybody who exists right now fix things, because they're all inherently racist and they just don't know it. And then that's why it's okay to burn police precincts, to damage federal courthouses, and to destroy police cars in the street. That's why it's okay, because they're fighting systemic racism.
Well, here's a question. If you don't know you're racist and you don't know what you're doing, how do you stop that from happening?
Exactly. Apparently, you get assaulted, beaten, and shamed in public.
But you're still going to do it because you don't know. You're still going to do it, racism, because you don't know you're doing it. So even if you get beat up, get shot at, whatever,
right,
you're still going to do it even after you because you don't know what you're doing.
Right. Actually, it's funny. Today, I heard this from a person of color who said, how I would feel if I was eating dinner with my wife and my family, and a bunch of black people came up and flipped over my plates and spilled my drinks and all that stuff. He said, do you think I would feel differently towards black people after that if I wasn't racist?
No.
Like, if I wasn't racist before, do you think maybe I am now?
Right.
And I thought about this, and this guy, he's really cool. He's Hispanic, but he was like coming from a perspective that I never thought of. And he said, all those people that maybe weren't are starting to think differently now.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's sad. I mean,
Yeah.
we're supposed to come together and not tear ourselves apart.
Right. And all this
And,
stuff
and,
is doing is
and
tearing us apart.
exactly. And then, and then us pointing out, just coming out of this, which I never heard before. I've been around forever. So coming out of this systemic racism, never even read about it until, this year. Doesn't make sense.
Well, that's also a part of the leftist movement, is to redefine language. Okay, so when you can take something that everybody understands as bad, when you take murder, okay, just something like murder, everybody understands that murder is bad, and then the law, the judicial system has to break murder down into parts, because over time there was accidental murder, manslaughter, murder 1, premeditated murder 2, and so on and so on. But the thing about racism is everyone knows that racism is bad. And even if you try not to be racist, you can be accused of it. And whether you're trying your damnedest not to be, all you have to be is accused in a public forum, and therefore you are. And that's the world that they've created, that it doesn't matter how many people of color you've helped in your life, or how many people of color you have as friends, which is also apparently a detriment, because if you bring that up as your defense, when somebody accuses you, they say, you know what? Hey, Bill, I think you're a racist. Why is that? Well, because you're a Trump guy. And I go, well, I have tons of black friends. I have tons of Hispanic friends. That doesn't matter. You can't use that. Mm-hmm. So that's where we go with this, where it's like an indefensible position, and it's all based on accusation, where once you're accused, there's no defense for it.
Well, the Democrats have a beautiful propaganda machine. I mean, they really do a good spin. I mean, it's amazing, actually.
It's like the machine gun of BS. It's endless rounds coming down range. And just when you think, like with Trump, for example, honestly, we thought that it was going to be Trump versus Biden. And then I think what's going on is that the Democrats are realizing that, wow, our candidate really sucks. We need to attack Trump from other angles that Biden can't attack him from. And that's why I'm saying I really am starting to think that this debate might not happen for whatever reason, because that will be the killing stroke into the Biden campaign. Once everybody sees that he can't think on his feet, done.
Yeah. Well, he'll come out and say he has COVID or something like that. He can't.
That's what yes, yeah. Absolutely. Or here's the thing. Here's my prediction. I'm going to put it out there. Somebody in the Biden staff has COVID, therefore Joe is quarantining and he cannot participate. That's what I'm waiting for.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, we have a video of "We Are Democrats," so let's take a look at this, okay?
Yeah.
For the workers, for the dreamers, and asylum seekers, for those with disabilities, for seniors, for safer schools, neighborhoods, and communities, for secure retirement, for opportunity, for our country. We are the party of the people. We are Democrats.
There we go. If you want more of that, vote Democrat.
And there are plenty of people, thank God, that I talk to that, not that politics always comes up, but a lot of people now that I've told, like, about the show, or that, I'm political. They know I'm pro-Trump, and a lot of people now are like, I get it now. I see what you're saying. So I am thankful for that. Not saying that I'm turning people at a record rate, because I'm not. They're just paying attention now, because before I started to talk to some of these people, they just literally turned on CNN. They watched Rachel Maddow. They watched, all these BS. They watched Cuomo Jr., Fredo.
They got to watch the Bill Mason show.
They're not watching the Bill Mason show. But once they watch the Bill Mason show, they start to get a taste for, oh, this is fresh air. Here it is. This is not BS. This is actual stuff. So, I mean, honestly, there are people waking up in record numbers. It scares the hell out of Democrats. I guarantee you that all of the attacks on Trump for the post office, okay, the fact that normal routine maintenance to all this stuff that was going to happen anyway, all of a sudden they take pictures of people pulling a mailbox out of the ground, or like a sorting machine going onto a truck. It's normal maintenance. Those things get fixed. Those things get painted. That happens all the time. They actually move them. I had a friend of mine who worked for the post office. If they have a neighborhood and the mailman goes to the box and he's like, man, there's 2 letters in here. Why don't we move this 4 blocks over to where everybody's going to use it? And they do that. They literally move the mailbox to where it's going to be used, because why do you want to send a mailman to a mailbox to pick up the mail when there's nothing in it, when the other one 4 blocks away is probably overflowing? So they have to regulate their service. So anyway, that's normal operations of the post office. And then they attack Trump for it. It's showing their hand. They're literally holding no cards for this election. And all these attacks are coming from left, right, center, up, down. None of them really make sense when you look at the way that Trump is handling globally. Okay. First of all, I want to touch on that because of the military issue that's coming up now, that these guys, like they're saying General Mattis is now talking bad about Trump and all these guys. Trump is not a supporter of the machine. Okay. And he literally admits that there's a machine, an industrial military complex machine that is funded on war. He is the guy who in his campaign said, if it's an unnecessary war, I'm bringing our boys home. He said that in the beginning, and he's actually doing it. And it's one more thing that he said he was going to do. Now, if people don't like that, they can vote him out. But I guarantee you, the people that are getting their sons and daughters home because they're not in Syria or Afghanistan anymore are ecstatic to have their kids home and are probably going to vote Trump. So that's another level that they can't attack Trump on, because it's just those guys in the Pentagon that are pissed off. And of course they are. They have contracts with Raytheon and Lockheed and all these other people. Yeah, they're pissed off that he's pulling troops out, because it makes a contract for 7 million rounds of ammunition not be necessary. I mean, it's just it is what it is.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's why he was, of course, he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize because of Israel and the UAE deal. So
absolutely. And honestly, I think he should. The way he's avoided war, another fine print that no one talked about at CNN, first president in 39 years to not get into a mass conflict. Now, some people argue the point that the rocket blast on what was his name, Khashoggi or something? Soleimani. Yeah, that the rocket attack on Soleimani nulls that void. But that was not a conflict. No troops were involved. We didn't put boots on the ground, and we didn't risk any lives. So that's the first guy in 39 years that did not put troops on the ground and risk their lives as a new president. So that's something to be said, and that's Nobel Peace Prize worthy.
Definitely. I hope he gets it. So that's the show tonight. I think we're going to do a next show on next Tuesday, is show the different election scenarios. So what could happen? So we're going to go through the electoral college and what will happen if nobody gets 270. We're going to go through if both parties declare victory. That could be a problem. And then we'll go from there. And then it might go to the House if no one declared victory. So we'll go over all those scenarios. Do you have any last words, Bill?
I guess last words were, I'm going to talk to your point. I just found out today that technically, I think it's December 14th is constitutionally the final day that states have to get their crap together. It doesn't matter. They have to have all their votes counted. Everything has to be done by December 14th. So originally I thought the day after the election, they should have this done. Constitutionally, they do have until December 14th to nail it down.
Right.
So that being said, I may have misspoke the last show where I thought hey, the day after the election, you got to have, a choice. Technically, that's not the case. I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, thanks, Bill. We always tell you the truth, or if we don't tell you the truth, we look it up and make sure we correct that. So I appreciate that, Bill. All right, well, that's the show. Hope you join us next time. Please subscribe. Ring the bell, please, because if you don't ring the bell, you won't get notifications when the show is on. And we'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely. Like and subscribe.
Good night.